Arctic is directed by Joe Penna, stars Mads Mikkelsen, and is basically about this guy whose plane crash lands in the middle of the Arctic and he simply just has to survive. That's literally all you need to know about this movie. There's kind of not much else to it. Now, when it comes to most survival movies, I would say it's a little bit hit and miss. 9 out of 10 times, survival movies tend to go down the cliched and over-dramatic path where they get really emotional within the last few hours of the film, and it usually drags the film down because that's all they're going for and not much else. However, every so often, a survival movie comes along that delivers pretty much the same stuff you've seen before, but in a unique and interesting way that makes it stand out amongst the more cliched and predictable ones. For instance, one of the best examples I have is 127 Hours. That movie, if handled by anyone else other than Danny Boyle, would probably be this cliched, over-dramatic, Oscar bait survival movie that only kind of works for its performance. But because Danny Boyle directed that film, there's a lot more energy and enough of his own unique style and direction behind it to make it stand out amongst the cluttered genre of survival movies that just kind of deliver the same stuff every time. And this is where Arctic comes in. Because handled by anyone else, this would kind of be very boring. But luckily, due to Mads Mikkelsen's incredible lead performance and some gorgeous cinematography, this movie immediately gets elevated to probably a similar level to that of 127 Hours. I wouldn't say it's as good as that film, but it's definitely better than a lot of its contemporaries within that survival genre. Also, if the name Joe Penna rings a bell, it's because he used to be a YouTuber under the name of Mystery Guitar Man. If you watched YouTube back in like 2011, 2012, then you'll definitely know who this guy is. I used to watch his videos all the time, and when I found out that he was making a feature-length film that had Mads Mikkelsen in it, I immediately leapt at the chance to watch it as soon as I could. And this movie is just brilliant, especially when you consider that this is a feature debut from a YouTuber of all people, and the fact that it looks as good as it does and nothing looks or feels fake in the film at all is genuinely mind-blowing, especially, again, considering the kind of person who's made it. Like, I have nothing against Joe Penna. Like I said, I loved his content back in the day, but you would never think of a YouTuber making this good a quality of a film, because the cinematography is genuinely gorgeous and is one of my favourite aspects of the entire film. It never feels over-stylized, it feels very bleak, desolate, and very ice-cold as well, which is kind of intended, considering that it's set in the fucking snow. But it just works for the sake of the film. Everything feels very real, nothing feels fake, and it feels very brutal and unforgiving, which is exactly what the movie is trying to go for. It's not in your face with the brutality and bleakness of it. It's very subtle in that sense, but you can very distinctly tell that the tone is very unforgiving and bleak. Like, literally from the moment the movie starts, you kind of know that's the tone they're going for. And like I said, all of this, cinematography aside, is elevated by an incredible lead performance by Mads Mikkelsen. He's always been one of my favourite actors out there, and this movie kind of just proves it even more. The fact that he kind of has to carry this movie on his own really really works for the sake of the film, and he really makes it that bit more believable, especially when he has to do things he might not necessarily want to do. He still does it anyway, and he really makes every moment count and feel as believable as he possibly can. I also really like the score to this movie as well. It's not in your face with being very overdramatic. It's kind of subtle and only pops up in the moments that it's supposed to. And I feel like for a movie like this, the soundtrack kind of has to be very subdued and can't take up too much of what's going on, because I think if it does, then the actual moments on the screen and what the actor is doing kind of take a back seat. But here, the music knows just the right moments and when to peak and when not to peak, and it gives the visuals and the acting enough room to breathe. And I really liked just the general motifs that were weaved in and out of this movie as well. Unfortunately, what this movie does well in its presentation, it unfortunately slightly lets it down in its pacing. Now, I'm all for slowly paced dramas, but this movie does take the piss a little bit. There are some scenes that go on for a little bit too long, and I understand what they're doing, especially within the first half of the movie. They're kind of establishing the routine that he's set himself and how he goes about doing that. So I can kind of understand why those have to be fairly slow. But there are a couple of moments in this movie where the pacing gets a bit too slow for my liking. When the movie has a somewhat steady pace to it, during moments of him doing things or, you know, things happening outside of his control, it's pretty good. But unfortunately, there are just a couple of moments that feel like they slow the movie down just a bit too much. In the end, I'm going to give Arctic a 7.5 out of 10. This is definitely leaning more towards an 8 than it is a 7, but I couldn't really make my mind up, so I settled with a 7.5. I presume with like future rewatches, it'll probably end up being an 8 more than anything else. But yeah, this was a really impressive feature debut, especially coming from someone such as Joe Penna, a YouTuber of all people. And yeah, if you haven't seen this movie or haven't even heard of it, I highly recommend you check it out, because it's going under a lot of people's radars, and I think a lot more people need to see it. So guys, that was my review for Arctic, and I just very quickly want to apologise for the lack of videos over the last 2 to 3 weeks. I've been very busy with uni work and other stuff that's been going on that's kind of turned my brain to scrambled egg right now. But just so you know, I hope to get back into a more consistent stream of uploads, this being the first, obviously. I plan on seeing John Wick Chapter 3 at some point soon. There are also new releases like Rocket Man. Booksmart comes out in a week or so. I still need to see Detective Pikachu, but don't worry. I don't know what I'm going to end up seeing in the next few weeks, but I will make sure I get more reviews out to you in the coming months. So yeah, stay tuned for all that. I look forward to posting more reviews, and it's nice to be back after the hectic few weeks that I have had off YouTube. But yeah, I hope you guys are looking forward to what I have in store. If you like the video, then give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Bye!